What the fuck is that? Oh my, it's a big kid with the Marshals, man.
I'm not your enemy.
One of your allies is back in the game.
Oh my god, that same kid with the fucking...
¿Qué pasa, vaqueros, and welcome back to the channel. Today's episode is not a shotgun, surprising enough. It's actually considered a pistol. Well, it's a pistol shotgun, and you all know it. It's the Marshal. And what I want to do today is revisit this thing, because you remember when it first came out, up until its release, everybody was talking about it, and then it came out and it sort of disappeared into the ether. So yes, we're going to talk about that gun that everyone's forgot, the Marshal, why it's one of the strongest pistols in the game, why it's more viable than you might think. We're going to go over a best class, and talk about a reason or two on why you might want to use this thing for your loadout. Now, let's just get into it with some stats. As always, the stats and numbers you're going to see for this video are covered on sim.gg on that fabulous website. I leave a link to it in the description below. Make sure to go check it out. So getting into the damage that the Marshal does, you'll see that it does 18 damage all over the body per pellet, except for the head, which does 19 damage. You might be thinking that is pretty weak, and it is. And other shotguns that do this kind of damage, well, you're not going to be killing anybody. It's just not good. But the thing about this that's different is that you have 8 pellets, but the damage cap is for 8 pellets and not just 4. Let me back up. So if you remember other shotguns in this game, or actual shotguns in the shotgun category, their damage is capped at 4 pellets. So if you hit 4 pellets, you're getting the max potential damage you can do in that range. But this gun doesn't have that. It's basically every single pellet does its own damage, and there is no cap. So 1 pellet does 18, 2 does 36, and then you hit all 8, you do 144 damage if you hit all body shots. If you hit headshots mixed in there, you'll get a little bit higher than that. But you'll deal basically, if you hit all the pellets, 144 damage. Now, if you do manage to hit 8 pellets on the head, you will be doing 152 damage per shot, which is one of the highest, if not the highest damage you can do with a pistol in the secondary category out of all of them. I checked a few of them, some of the burst ones, the magnums. None of them can really do that amount of damage. But of course, in most scenarios, you're not going to be hitting that many pellets on the head. Now, this leads me to my next topic, running the single Marshal. If you run the single Marshal, you are doing it wrong. Basically, you only have 2 shots in a reload, right? Well, if the most you can do is 152 if you hit all 8 of your pellets, that's a 2-shot kill, right? But that's if all of your pellets are hitting, or at least 6 of your 8 hit the head 2 times in a row. That is 9 times out of 10, or I would say 10 times out of 10, never going to happen. You are never going to be able to get 2 shots on a fully armored player, which is what we're talking about here, 300 health, with the single Marshal. It doesn't do enough body damage to do it, and you have to hit the headshot with 6 pellets per 2 shots in a row. No, that's just too much, right? The real sad thing about that is that the single Marshal has a really tight aim down sight spread, and also that damage range where you can get those 2 shots is out to about 7.4 meters with no attachments. That's really good for secondary, and the time to kill on that is actually insanely good at about 250 milliseconds if you were to get that 2-shot with the single version. Out to that range, that's really good, especially considering it's a sidearm, but again, never gonna happen. It's just not worth it. Never use this thing single. This leads me to my next topic, which is Akimbo. That's what everybody was running when it first came out. Everyone was like, oh my god, Dragon's Breath Akimbo, double barrel shotgun sidearm. And of course, no one's using it now for a reason. But if we get into Akimbo, one of the things that's not obviously clear for a lot of people is that in the game, it says that you lose damage when you run it Akimbo. I can confirm for a fact, and it's on sim.gg as well, you do not lose any damage whatsoever when you use Akimbo. Each shot is still going to do around 144 damage if you are up close and personal and you don't miss any pellets, which means that technically if you were to hit all 4 of those shots and hit all your pellets, you could deal about 576 points of damage up close. That is a massive amount of damage, more than any shotgun in the game, and that's with 2 shots from each of your pistols, basically 4 shots, right? The doof. But that's likely not going to happen. You're going to miss some pellets, right? Because with Akimbo, you do get a little bit of a wider spread, and of course, if you move around, your spread gets a little wider. So you're not going to be getting that much damage, but the potential is there. So if you can get close, and if you don't miss a lot of pellets, you can still do enough damage to 2-tap players. It's just does an enormous amount of damage, right? And the real trade-off here, though, is the range. With Akimbo, you do lose a little bit of range. It does take your max damage range to 6.7 meters, but to be honest, that doesn't really matter, because the most you're going to be able to get out of this thing with Akimbo is going to be around that 4 to maybe 4.5 meters of range. That's really the sweet spot to this gun. Heck, outside of 2 meters, it's going to be a little inconsistent, and if they're moving around, it's going to be really hard to get that 2-tap. But it is possible. Around 4 to 4.5 meters, I was getting that 2-tap where it was just obliterating people super quick. Really, really fun, really, really nice. And you only have those 2 shots, so you have to be careful with it. But of course, this thing just does an enormous amount of damage. You can actually get 2-shot kills, or rather I should say 4-shot kills, out past that 4.5 meter mark, but the likeliness of that happening is not very often because it's just, the pellet spread is just too wide. So it's not going to be able to kill fully armored players past that. I promise you, it's just not going to work. And none of the attachments seem to help reduce the spread or anything like that. So what this means is that the barrels that you have aren't really completely 100% necessary. I do rock the cut down barrel because that does give you a little bit more range, but to be honest, it doesn't really make that much of a difference because you're still going to be at that 4 meter mark where it's basically the cutoff range where you can get those 4-shot kills because the pellets are just too spread out to be able to do otherwise. So really, if you want to rock that badass extended barrel, go for it. It's not going to really do much for you, but the other cut down barrel isn't as well either. So it's really up to you. It's really not necessary. The biggest thing here is to just play to the gun's strength, which is just get in someone's face and just blast their damn face off. I mean, it works wonders when you're just so close. Before I get into anything else, people do want to know about Dragon's Breath on this thing. And yeah, Dragon's Breath, it was definitely gimmicky more than anything. Nowadays, it just isn't worth it. It's going to reduce your overall damage output. Yes, you can still 4-tap, with both shots from each gun, but you're not doing nearly as much damage. You have to wait for the burn to kick in. If someone's wearing EOD, it's going to make it more inconsistent. It's really not worth it. It's just not. So don't run it. Don't bother with Akimbo, Dragon's Breath, or even the single Dragon's Breath version. They both don't do enough damage. It's just not worth it. So just ignore it completely. If you want to know the best way to run it, the class is very, very simple because there's not many attachments on it. Basically, just run the cut down barrel or don't run a barrel at all. It doesn't really matter, I guess, but why not? And then just run Akimbo, and that is it. That is the only 2 attachments you need to get this thing to its full potential, and it is an absolute blast to use. Now let's talk about the gun and how it performs overall, because I've talked it up a lot, but when you use it, you might notice it may not be as great. It might be a little finicky at times, and that's really because of the range. This thing, the main reason to use it is because it has such insane stopping power up close, and it's just honestly the fun factor of it. It's so much fun to just turn a corner, you shoot with an SMG, you turn the corner again, you switch to your Marshals, they don't expect it, and when they pop the corner, you just 2-tap them with each gun, and they go down. They always seem to say something really funny like, "What the hell was that?" And it's just so much fun. The fun factor is a big important thing when using guns in Warzone, I'm telling you. It's always about meta this and meta that, but sometimes you just need to use a gun because it's fun and it's just niche and cool. That's a big thing here, but also, yes, there is some practical use from this gun. Like I said, as long as you're in that 4 meter, 2 to 4 meter range, you can down people pretty easily. You can just absolutely decimate them. They're not going to know what hit them, right? Now, overall, is it the best sidearm in the game? No, absolutely not. There's a lot of other pistols that are probably a lot better to run, that are more forgiving, like a full auto pistol or maybe one of the burst pistols like the Renetti or anything like that. But to be honest, this one is the most fun, it's the most cool, and it does have some viability. It isn't as useless as I used to think it was, or as many people think it still is. Yes, it's very difficult and very niche to use, but hey, it still has some redeemable factors, it's different, and it's fun. I mean, it's an Akimbo double barrel that, to be honest, might be better than the actual double barrel in the game itself from Vanguard. So with that being said, that's all I gotta say for you guys. So let me know down below in the comments, what do you think about this gun? What other shotguns should I check out? I think I'm revisiting the Einhorn next, or maybe the double barrel. I don't know, I'll let you guys know. But with all that being said, I will see you in the next video.
Revenge complete.
What the fuck was with the road?
Down the final 10.